Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here today. This is Nicole with Topaz and welcome to Quick Tip Thursday. This is going to be a very quick tip on how to create a coloring book effect using Topaz Simplify. Topaz Simplify is a digital art program and it has so many different uses and different types of digital art that it can quickly help you create. It also has some wonderful technical uses as well. But one of the digital art types that it can help to produce is a coloring book type of an effect. And so we are going to be covering those steps here today. It's a quick three-step process. The first step is going to be our edges. The next step will be working on our color. And then the next step after that will be adjusting the color saturation and focusing in on the dynamics of the image to create the effect that you're after. So we're going to start off with the sunflower image. And let's go ahead and turn off this after. And here you see the before image, this background image. I'll just make a quick copy of my background copy and go into Filter, Topaz Labs, Topaz Simplify 4. The first thing I'm going to do is come down here to our interface, or the lower right of the interface, and press reset. And the first step for this effect that we're going after here today is going to be our edges. One of the very cool things about Simplify and what allows you to create not only painterly effects, but also these kind of sketch and edge effects are the different modes that we allow you to work in your image. We have a combined mode, a base mode, and an edges mode. A combined mode is going to show you both the color base of your image along with the edges that are produced through the program. The base will just show you the color base of your image and not the edges that are produced. And the edges mode will show you just the edges. By default, your edges are zeroed out to no edges to be shown, so all you need to do to add in edges is open up your edges module, and you'll want to take this edge strength within your edges module all the way to the right. For this type of an effect, I like to get as many edges as I possibly can to start off with so I know how many edges I can have in my image and how much texture I can have within the flat areas as well to help create this type of textured coloring book effect. So to do that, I take my edge strength all the way up to 5 and then my simplify edge all the way down, my reduce edges all the way down, and those are the largest amount of edges that can be achieved with this program for this particular image that we started off with. By default, it's going to have color edges, but you can quickly change that by changing your edge type from color edge to a mono edge. We have all different types of color edges and color lines, so you can check that out. But my favorite for this type of effect is a mono edge normal, and that'll get me to a black edges and lines on a white background. So now that I have that, the next step is going to be for me to reduce the edges to what I kind of want as that coloring book base for me. One important thing to know about Simplify is you're going to best see how it's affecting your image at 100%. So I'm just going to take my zoom up to that level. And that way you can actually see how it's affecting your images and your pixels, and you won't be surprised when you take that back into your host program. So I'll kind of just put my navigator right here on the petals. And what I'm going to do is work with my Simplify Edge, Reduce Weak, and Reduce Small to reduce the amount of edges to the effect that I'm after. I want to keep a lot of the texture edges that you see coming through in these flatter areas or these areas of flatter tone. I definitely want to keep these really strong edges, but I do still want to keep those texture edges as well. But I don't want it to be as much texture. So the way that I can work with that again is the Simplify Edge, Reduce Weak, or Reduce Small. The Simplify Edge is going to reduce the amount of edges based upon the strength and size put together. But if you want to go in and individually remove just your weaker details but leave the smaller details, you can do that. So you can see a lot of these small details are still left over, but it's removed those weak, softer lines. And then reduce small edges is going to reduce the small ones no matter if they're super strong or weak. So you see some of these really strong edges are now removed. I find that with this technique, reducing the small versus the weak is going to give me a lot of impact with my heavier, stronger edges, and still take away some of that overly texturized effect that I want to get rid of, while still leaving this these weaker edges that kind of look like tone, some of that gray tone being put back in there, and that's going to help me achieve a coloring effect. So once I'm down to that, what I did here was just remove some small. I left the weaker ones in. I might take my Simplify Edge up just a touch, but not much. And I'm pretty happy here. Once I'm done with my edges, the next step, step 2, is going to be working with my transparency slider and then pressing apply. Now, a lot of you who are familiar with Simplify might say, well, why don't you just bring in your color using your combined mode, and now you can work with your edges and your combined. The reason that I go about the method that I'm about to show you is because if I go this way and I have to work with the original image color like this, it's going to take me a lot more time to work with all of these different sliders and all of these different adjustment sliders to get where I want with my color. I found a way that you can do this very quickly. So I'm going to go back to my edges, and all I'm going to do is go down to my finishing touches area, and I'm going to go down to my transparency area, transparency module, and just bring back in some of that original image color. And what the transparency will do, it's very similar to the opacity adjustment within Photoshop, or the transparency adjustment within the rest of our programs, where it will blend the original image into the affected image that you are creating. So as you take this up, you'll start to see much more of your original image than the effect. So you want to keep it more towards the lower end, and just take, I usually find that anywhere from about 0.2 to 0.5 is kind of where the sweet spot is for this particular effect. I'm going to leave mine at about 0.35. I like the color. Don't try to, when you're doing this effect, don't try to get the correct color at this time. All you're really trying to do is going to get some tone that you're going to really push and manipulate in the next step. But in this step 2, with the transparency, all you want to do is just bring back in some of that original image tone, and then we're going to push it and really pixelate it to get that coloring book effect. So I'm happy right about here, and I'm going to say apply. This little double check mark icon down here at the bottom of the right interface will apply the image. And when you apply an image within the workflow or within the same session, what it will do is take a look at what you're looking at on its screen and make that your new base image. So now if I take a look at my before and after, I'll see that my base image over here on the left, which is usually my before, is now what I've just applied. And so now I'm working from this layer specifically. So now I can really push this color without having to worry about all of that original heavy tone of that original image. So now we're on to step 3. I'm going to press reset all just to zero everything out. And in step 3, I shut everything else down except for my adjust module. And within the adjust module, I really want to focus in on my color and my dynamics, and I do that with my saturation boost, dynamic structure, and structure boost. So as I push my saturation up, I can start to get the colors that I'm after. If I see that only the really saturated colors, like in this image, the yellow is really coming through, and some of these not so saturated colors like the green are kind of staying soft, my saturation boost will really work on that green color. So you can start to balance out all the colors to even out really nicely. And then the really important thing to get this coloring book effect is this dynamic slider. What that's going to do is start to push and pull the different pixels of the tone, or tone of the pixels, and it will start to pixelate it because you're pushing it really, really far into and kind of breaking down the actual information. But in that breakdown, you're creating something that will start to give you an artistic effect, and that's really what we're trying for. So as you can see, as I did that, you'll start to see it just starts to get real pixelated, and it feels texturized like a crayon might when you're rubbing a crayon in a coloring book. So that's really how I'm able to achieve this very quickly. It's a very quick 3-step process, again, just the edges first, and then working with bringing back your tone and applying it within the second step using the transparency and apply button. And then the third step going into the adjust module, working on the saturation boost dynamics. And if you want to push those pixelation kind of the texture even further than you see here, you can take the structure slider and it will really start to pull off or make these edges of the texture that we left in really start to stand out and can give you that effect even more so. Structure boost will do it even more. You have to be very careful with that structure boost because it'll really start to stand out. So I only like to push that a little bit, but that structure I really like to play with. So let me go ahead and process this back to Photoshop by pressing OK, and let me show you the before and after. Here is our before where we started, and our after. So this is your very quick how to create a coloring book effect using Topaz Simplify 4.1. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of the day, morning or evening, and we'll be talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.